Hello and welcome. This is Friday, June the 26th, and we're here for our weekly Art Alliance for Contemporary Glass Meetup. And our guests today, we have lots of guests today, but curating all of this is Erin Schey, who is going to bring us information from the new exhibit, right, Silver, at Habatat Galleries. And so, Erin, I'm going to turn it over to you and let you do your magic.
Thank you, Marilee. Well, thank you everybody for joining us today. I'm really excited about this. And we have a bunch of the artists who are in the show actually joining us for this presentation. So I'm really honored to have all of you here. I'll be calling you out during the presentation. You might see a picture of your unmute yourself at that time. But I'll just tell you briefly about the show. It's up online right now at silvershow.org. So if you have a chance to go check that out today, tomorrow, whenever, and see the full exhibition, we're promoting these artists that we feel are going to be an important part of the future. And so basically, back in August of 2019, I emailed about 28 of our artists to ask who is going to be an important part of the future of glass, who's going to be a force. And we got a lot of names from the artists, and we looked them all up, and we invited about 99% of them. Certain artists weren't able to work in a manner that we're used to. They make installation art, or they make art that's basically unsellable. But the artists that could create work responded, and we put together a partnership to create this show. So we'll start the presentation now, and I look forward to getting your thoughts on these artists. So let me take over your screens, and we will get this show on the road. You're gonna see a picture of my boy in the bathtub. Don't mind him, just until we get the videos.
A brief picture.
A brief picture. So this, I want you to make sure you're looking at a full silver screen. It should say Habatat Silver on the full screen, correct?
It says Habatat Silver, and I've got you on speaker view so I can see just you and Silver.
Perfect, perfect. So this Silver, like I said, is up on silvershow.org. This is the glimpse of the website. You can obviously go there at your leisure. So I want to take you on a trip into the future with me. Jump into my spaceship and jump into this crystal ball. And we're going to go and look at some of the talent that's working in glass today, who will be a very important part of the future. I want to start off by saying I would advise that you consider acquiring a work from one of these artists in this exhibition for your collection. It's an amazing experience to support an artist earlier in their career and become part of their life path. I've heard so many times I should have bought, that would have been a great time to buy, and this is exactly the show that people will say that about today. So the first artist was advised by artist Tim Tate, who's with us today, and it is TERI Bailey, and TERI's on with us. Would you like to join us, TERI?
Hello, can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Hi.
So tell us a little about yourself.
So my name is TERI Bailey, like Erin said. I'm originally from Wisconsin. I'm currently living right outside of DC. I am the studio coordinator at the Washington Glass School and the director of WGS Contemporary Galleries. I enjoy working with a lot of different materials, but glass is really the one that I've fallen in love with. I have a background in glass blowing, but I have found that kiln working is really the technique that best carries the aesthetic and the feel that I really want to achieve in my work. So the pieces that you're seeing now and the pieces in the show are created using a kiln work technique. I'm layering glass stringers, which you'll be familiar with if you've seen artists such as Tutzinski's work. I'm using a very similar material. I am layering the stringers to create a specific pattern that references textiles rather than to build mass like she does. So I'm carefully layering the stringers out into my chosen patterns, and then I'm just lightly melting them in the kiln so that they stick together, but they still keep all of their individual texture and pattern. Then in the second firing, I'm heating the rods until they slump over a hand-carved mold. So each one of these molds are carved out of a plaster mixture, which I can actually just remove. I can wash it out of the glass after I'm done with it. And it creates a really beautiful negative interior space inside of these glass fabrics. I grew up around a lot of fabrics. Both my mother and my grandmother are quilters. So I've spent a lot of time thinking about textiles and how they help to shape our idea of what makes a home. Sometimes this is quite literally referencing the place where you grew up or live, but I found this idea can carry a lot more than that. So in these works, I'm exploring the relationship between this word, home, and the human body, kind of the idea of feeling at home within ourselves. So in both instances, fabric can act as a means of expression as well as sort of a shroud to hide behind. It can be a form of protection, comfort, expression, etc. So that first piece, the purple one, called Sanctuary Among Fragility, is inspired by the notion of a child hiding under a blanket when they're frightened. So this blanket is fragile, doesn't really provide any form of physical protection, but it acts as a source of comfort and of safety. I know that right now I definitely have days where I would like to hide away from the world for just a couple minutes. And I think we kind of all do that in our own way. I know on the tough days, I can go ahead and put on my favorite t-shirt and just sort of retreat and take solace in the familiar of that fabric for just a moment. The second work, Violence Among Growth, it's definitely struck a chord with some of the relevant imagery that we're seeing right now. I created this piece sort of in the vein of the last work, thinking about being hindered by something that was designed to protect us, possibly allowing ourselves to be suffocated by something that could be thrown off. That being said, I kind of hesitate to lay out any specific concept for this piece. I believe that this notion of suffocating and struggling is something that we experience as individuals in a wide variety of ways. So for example, this piece was actually just featured in an article about COVID-19, where the author felt that it was addressing the fear of the death cycle and the virus. And so I think that is part of why this body of work has really resonated with me in all of the insanity right now. It really helps me to capture and share a lot of the intense emotions that I think I am seeing and experiencing around me right now. So, shout out to Habitat and AACG. Thank you guys for giving us the opportunity to share this work today. These Zoom meetings are such a wonderful way to keep art alive right now. So I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Terry, but I have a question. How this particular piece, this Violence Among Growth, how does one hang it or show it? Does it lie down or fit on the wall, or how?
It is on the wall, yeah,
Okay.
so it hangs up.
All right, thank you.
Any other questions?
That was the same question I had, so good job.
Oh, cool. Yeah.
Thanks, Sarah. Great minds.
Well, thank you, Terry. Appreciate you being here.
Thank you.
The next artist was recommended by artist Laura Donifer, who we all know. You'll notice I had to dig into my archives to find different photos of the artists. So this is kind of fun to see the people who recommended the people, the artists in the show. And this is Bree CHESLER. I don't believe she's here today. She was on our Habitat Now talk, but I'll briefly talk about her work. Her work is about desire, excess, self-gratification, and the loss of content. She uses biology and botany, reflecting on cultural obsessions of beauty and desire. She's also exploring installation and mixed media. She recently had a large installation, which was this piece, on display at the Bellevue Arts Center. And this piece is 10 by 8 by 12 inches. It's 10 feet tall, 8 feet wide, 12 inches tall. She's focused on the internal and external. And you can definitely tell why she was recommended by Laura Donifer. And we are grateful for having her in the show. And her work is currently with her in her studio, but we're looking forward to seeing what she creates in the future as her career develops. Next in the show was a Habitat entry. We added a couple artists ourselves to this exhibition from artists we thought would fit well. Tamara Coatsworth, who is an artist that I discovered through Jim Della's book. Jim Della is here today, and I thank him for sending me a copy of his book. He had artwork of hers of decks of cards made out of glass that created little houses. And I was very impressed by her talent and reached out to her. And she showed in our show Pop and Lock, and she had these beautiful glass crayons on top of Warhol drawing-esque glass paper. And they were very, very fun. I know we sold at least one to somebody in this room. And she sent for this new exhibition something she was playing with, a new body of work. She has experience in multiple processes: casting, blowing, cold working, hot working, fusing. But this is what she chose to send in for the show. They're exploring color and shadow and a change of perspective. And I have seen these works in person, and they are very impressive with the depth of color mixed with the small white pieces of glass of different shape and scale that they glow off of. And it's an idea that I've never seen before, and it's quite beautiful to see in person. So,
Aaron, I have a question.
Sure.
This piece was very intriguing to me. I'm trying to get a more perspective of the construction. Is it pieces of wood and then she carves the glass on both sides? Can you walk a little bit through how this piece is put together?
Sure, absolutely. Now that I've seen it in person, I can say I can know this answer. So there's no real wood. There's glass that it's mounted to. So all those little pieces of edging are color, and all those pieces that are white glass. This thing is basically assembled together so to provide the entire piece. They're all mounted on a wall. You can kind of see it maybe in the next picture. And each exterior part is a different small piece of plate glass that's been cut and colored. And then these particular edge pieces, I'll call them the white edges, are kind of slid into place and laminated. So it is a stunning piece, and I'd be happy to send you video or more photos in the future if you're interested. This next artist is recommended by artist Tim Tate, who's here today. Thank you, Tim. Sean Donlon. Sean, are you here today? I don't know if you're making it. So if you are, unmute yourself, or else I will take over for you. And I will...
Hey there, guys.
Oh, good. You're there. All right, Sean.
Awesome. Thanks for having me. My name's Sean Donlon, and I'm from Richmond, Virginia. I went to school at Virginia Commonwealth University, and after that, I started a studio here in Richmond and developed my own studio practice and run a studio called Mule Barn. I've been working with glass for 10 years now as a flame working artist, but I've been skilled in all avenues of glass making. I've worked in Germany to study glass eye prosthetics, and also Italy to find information and work with master Italian glass blowers. And I've taught at Virginia Commonwealth University, at Penland School of Crafts, and at the Chrysler Museum in Norfolk, Virginia. So I use teapots as a way to make sense of the world. And I use these teapots as installation components to make my artwork. My teapot story is basically, well, going through my journey as an artist, I've always questioned function and also sculptural elements of artwork. And I fell in love with the teapot when I realized how much I had overlooked it. I've been using the teapot to make different components for installation because of how universally recognizable the object is. This piece is actually a wall piece. So from when you stand back from it, it looks like an abstract sculpture. It's called rhythm because it has a lot of different movement and notions of play with it. And as you walk closer to it, you identify it as, oh, these are silver teapots. And then when you keep on peeling that onion layer back of curiosity, you find out that it's actually glass. And it creates a lot of visual, mysterious elements of questioning reality and what you believe to be normal with what you see. And one of the reasons I like using the teapot in this body of work is that it's a canvas that's been used throughout history to, you know, show historically what's going on in the world. And it's also something that everyone can recognize. It's a blend of function and sculpture with the illusion of materials. If you go to the next slide, you can see that it's another piece. This one's called Tempo. And if you go to the next one, you can see where I actually use the teapots in a way to make more of a narrative slide, or narrative piece, sorry. Can you go forward, Aaron? Hello?
I wonder if we lost Aaron. No.
Aaron. Okay, well, if we can.
Aaron still has the screen, Sean.
I've got some more cool works I'd love to show you, but we can wait for Aaron to jump back on.
I'm going to, Aaron, can you hear us? Do we lose you? This is tragic.
All right, I broke the Zoom meeting, everybody.
Goodness, this is never happened before. So, and Aaron has the whole show. So we'll see.
What if you unmute everybody? Will it unmute him?
No, he's not muted. He just for some reason is not. I mean, he shows as.
He probably lost his connection. He's probably there. He goes.
Okay.
So so these going back to, should I just continue then?
Sure. Yeah. Let's go, Aaron. I think is this the slide you were looking for, Sean?
Yeah, exactly.
The image, fabulous. Thank you.
Yeah. So these teapot sculptures play with narrative and different elements of humor. So these are melting teapots that are in frames. So you can actually, when you install these pieces, they take on the wall color or whatever background you put them on. And does anybody have any questions about?
These are actually blown glass, but they're mirrored. The surface is mirrored.
Yeah, so it's all flamework blown glass, and then I mirror the inside of the vessel.
They are quite stunning. I apologize for that brief break. My computer decided to flip out on me, but I am. Thank you, Sean, and Marilee for covering for me as I was telling my wife.
It freaked me out.
I just did an update to my router yesterday. You never know what that means, but I'm glad we're back. But these are stunning. Are they blown and flame worked, right, Sean?
Yeah, so I use a flame working technique. So I basically sculpt a bubble from using torch work, and I'll add the different melting components to it by manipulating the glass in the flame, then coming out and bending them and adding to them and sucking in air and blowing out air in order to get them to make that dripping illusion. It's not as easy as just heating it up and then letting gravity take over the work, because you really have to make it move the way that you want.
These are beautiful. We had 3 of them on display during our Pop and Lock show, and we sold all 3, right, Sean? I corrected this all this time. But
thanks for letting me be a part of the show, Aaron. I love you guys at Habitat, and I hope everybody here is doing great.
Thank you, Sean. I appreciate you being here too. All right, another addition which was added by Habitat is an artist named Maria Bang Espersen. Maria, I believe, makes some beautiful works. You're going to see them here in a second, and they are very different, and her point of her work is to be very different. Her idea of glass art is everything is malleable. There's no definition. This is against classical art related to glass. There's not ordinary, she's created it without a plan. She combs into the studio and creates these forms by pulling on the glass over and over again as if it's a piece of chewing gum while it's hot. It looks like it's soft, but it's very, very, very hard, and obviously as we know, glass. And they're just beautiful, stunning works in person. They're beautiful in color, and she's someone to keep your eye on for the future, because she, like many of the artists in the Silver Show, are going to be a force, and I'm proud to have her in the show. Another addition by Habitat is Seth Fairweather. Seth, are you on today? I think you were going to RSVP for this, but if you're not, I will step in. Feel free to unmute yourself. But if you're not here, I will jump in for you, Seth. Seth has worked with bronze before, and I learned a lot about him recently. He creates these objects in a way where bronzes are made in multiples. Well, glass in its truest form is created in unique alone, and in a unique process is creating unique works. And so he destroys the mold when he creates his works and he casts them. And he's interested in nature, time, memory, being frozen, and you can see these hidden faces deep in his work. And every work is made uniquely. And these things are quite substantial. They're very large, comparable to the images you see in front of you. And he's someone to keep an eye on for the future as well. He's super motivated, super driven, and makes beautiful things. Next edition was added by us here at Habitat, a longtime friendship with Anna Gibson. Anna, are you on? I know I saw you earlier.
I'm here.
Perfect, good timing.
Welcome back. So I was going to say, first of all, so enormous thanks to Aaron and Corey and Regina and everyone at the Habitat family and AACG for giving me the opportunity to talk to you. So my name's Hannah Gibson, and I'm based in the UK, just outside of London. My background's in geology, and I've always been passionate about glass. 5 years ago, I began studying for an MA in glass, and I began working on a project that became called Recycling Narratives, Whispering Sweet Nothings. So essentially, I keep the shape the same, so it's an easily identifiable shape that hopefully brings people together. So the focus is on the material itself. So I work with predominantly recycled glass and upcycled objects. So I try and use increasingly challenging types of glass. It might be television glass, car windscreen glass, glass for mobile phones, glass bottles. but by keeping the shape the same, it means I can focus on the materiality. So each figure is completely unique. So in effect, it's its own limited edition. So it's impossible to ever try and recreate two the same. So they range in size from 3.5 to 11 inches. I'm trying to upsize them, and they weigh up to about £6 in weight. So like I said here, each one is completely unique. No two will ever be the same. So this one here is called Through the Looking Glass. So it's made out of, currently in Habitat Silver, and it's made from 100% recycled Bang & Olufsen television screens. So you can see the iron inclusion on the front, which is a faint whisper of a previous life. So the ones here, they're made out of, again, recycled television glass. So this figure here, Time and Tide Wait for No Man, there's one similar in the permanent collection at the Imagine Museum in St. Petersburg, and it's made from recycled milk bottles and watch parts. So it is challenging to incorporate metal inclusions into any type of glass, but to try and include it with recycled glass can be problematic. So there's elements of bronze and silver and copper and brass, which create beautiful effects, so beautiful vortexes like you can see here. So on this one here, Sanguine Seas. So something that's very important to me, even though it's recycled glass, is to show that it can be polished to perfection. So it's cold work to a high level. So I take it from 80 grit all the way through to Syrian. So the backs are always very highly polished, which is tricky to do because with recycled glass, but it's a labour of love. So as I said, each figure is completely unique, and hopefully it's a shape that unites people together. The world has slowed down in recent months, and it's given me the opportunity, hopefully, to pause and reflect and look at what materials I can start to use now. So anyway, so enormous thanks to Aaron and everyone at the AACG for giving me this opportunity. So thank you.
Thank you, Hannah. I'm waiting for your dog to come up and give you a kiss now, like last time.
She's under the seat.
Under the seat. Beautiful, beautiful works, very identifiable. I love your stuff. Thank you again.
Thank you.
The next artist was recommended by Ohio artist Brent Key Young. It is an artist named Scott Goss. I don't believe Scott's with us today, so I'll talk about his work. Scott is not obsessed, but he really enjoys the idea of architecture through generations. A building is built at one time, it's then remodeled and remodeled again, and then in the end of its life, it is demolished to create new life, to start it all over again with a new building. He explores this narrative idea with layer upon layer of his work. These works are well-mounted pieces, fused glass, and give an idea of simple architectural tones. And if you like this kind of work, and you like wall work that has a presence that really draws you in for you to experience different kinds of visuals, Scott is one to keep your eye on. He's a very driven artist, he is very talented, and obviously a force for the future. So thank you for I'm grateful to have Scott in the show. Next, an artist recommended by Michael Janis is an artist named Eric Hess. Eric's work it looks like it is sand cast to me, but he says it's hot worked. It explores touchstones of everyday life, emotions, and intellectual responses to what we go through, such as abuse, death, greed, happiness, control, loss of control. The works appear simple, but they're very complex in idea, exploring shadow and light. And the first piece is pedestal. This piece is wall-mounted. And as you explore the piece, it has a kind of a Bertolini appearance to the work with some extra mixed media to it. So someone to keep your eye on, and we're honored to have him in the show. Yeah, glass, copper, and wood. The next artist in the show was recommended by UK artist David Reiki. And I know she's not with us today, but I will speak for her. Her name is Julie Johnson. She's in the UK, and she does animals. She loves the lightheartedness of the animals we surround ourselves with, whether they're birds or dogs or other cats or other kind of objects. She really takes the time to create beautiful, loving pieces that are really easy on the eyes. Julie creates eye candy, for lack of a better term, and she has different styles of her creations. These two being birds, and you can see them together here. And then she has some work that has a little bit of a deeper tone. This particular piece is called Red Cherry, and it's obviously a bird. There's metal legs on the actual bird sitting on top. And she has a partner she works with, a collaborator named Eric Lemaire, and I'm sure they work together on different parts of these particular objects. But we're honored to have her in the show, and they're very fun. Next in the show is ZSUZSANNA KORODI, who was recommended by Peter Hora, who everybody should know, I hope so. And ZSUZSANNA was on one of our glass trips to the Europe, and we discovered her and did well with her work out there. And I'm really excited about her and her career. I'm going to show a short video right now of her work to give you an idea of what it looks like, because it's hard to tell from photo alone. So that gives you a general idea of what happens as you walk around ZSUZSANNA's work. The work is about layers, the parallels and perpendicular images which move both space and time, almost in a rhythm. The work is a visual image of movement and geometry of light. She also dives deep into technology to really get her point across of what she's trying to create. So when someone's this innovative, it's always amazing to see what they come up with. And I want to show you that this particular piece, which is called Cap Locks, is the same piece in the next photo, which I'm showing right now. A simple move of the camera to a different angle changes the perspective of the piece, which really draws in the viewer. And I'm really excited about her work and where her career will end up in the future. So someone to keep your eye on. This piece is called Control, same kind of angle, and wall pieces, priced reasonably, someone to think about. Next is an artist recommended by Tomas Helvichka. I believe she's on. ZSUZSANNA, would you please unmute yourself? I heard you earlier.
Hello, can you hear me?
We can hear you. We can hear you now. Yep. Please tell us about you and your work.
Okay, hello. I'm happy to be here to present my work a little bit. And first of all, I should to say that I love to make an experiments with glass, and I love combine it with another materials or work with some industrial materials like fiberglass or basalt fibers, which I used in my last project. And sometimes I also make my own materials, for example, homemade flubber from glue and borax, or work with crystals of blue vitriol or bismuth. And actually each material is suggestive to me, so how you can see it. But in this case, I mix the cast glass and grinding wheel, which will no one use anymore because unfortunately the company has canceled the operations. So this project is on the one hand kind of recycling. And this is a little bit, I can say, paradox that the grinding wheel cut the glass basically, but here in the objects are in kind of harmony as yin and yang, black and white, reverse and observe. And also these are differences as the people are, but working together with kind of harmony generally. The basic of these objects is a cycle base of everything, and it is just cut for the pieces with water jet cut and cast together with glass, then cut, polished and glued together again. And all the pieces has a special glass. Some of them has the parts of recycled glass from old TV screens, And that was a little bit technological teaser for me. And the TV glass can be simply gray or clean with kind of maps built up with copper oxides, how you can see on this picture. And other objects has parts from glass which react on the UV light and change the color when the sun is shining or if it's raining. And some of them are multicolor. And what is the inspiration coming from? That's from the materials all around me. And actually, I don't care if these are industrial or natural. All the time, it is a challenge to me to make some little bit different, and that make me excited and happy.
Very nice. Thank you, Zuzanna. I want to read a quote from your paperwork you sent me that I read that I really enjoyed. And I'll read it to the group. It says, "I work with glass as if I were conducting an interview, but without the niceties and courteous phrases." I found that was very, very fun. And it goes to show you really dive into your work in a way that you really get your point across and create what you want to create. Thank you, Zuzanna.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Next artist is Mark LEPUTA. For some reason, my Peter Bremers slide moved away, but he was recommended by Peter Bremers. And Mark, are you online with us today?
Yes, I'm here. Is it working?
All right. I can hear you.
Okay. My name's Mark LEPUTA. I've been working in glass since 2004. I started blowing glass. I was traveling and needed a job, and it was just kind of broke, and I found a glass studio that decided to hire me, and they picked me up as a cold worker. I had no experience whatsoever, and I just started working 40 hours a week as a cold worker, grinding off punnies and things. And so that style of working is still very prevalent in my work. I feel very fortunate to have started as a cold worker because I learned to love it, where a lot of glass artists choose to hate it. But from there, I moved to Alabama, where I've been since 2007, and I'm actually just about to move away from here and start my own little studio in Oregon with a friend of mine named Steve Hagan. So a lot of big things happening for me, but yeah, I could just talk about my work a little bit. So the series that you see here is what I call my tensile series. A piece similar to what's on the screen now, I created back in 2016 for an exhibition I had in the Netherlands. And the whole exhibition was based on this previous series, my Glacier series. A lot of the ways I work is that as I'm creating something, I spend so much time with one individual piece, grinding and cutting and polishing and poring over the details, that oftentimes that's where I find my inspiration, is just through the act of working on the art. So a lot of times I'll have ideas for new pieces, or sometimes I just change the work right then on the spot. But as I was going through source material for different ways to mimic ice, I came across a way of basically using the Grawl technique. And I had this photo that I took on a trip of just ice, and there's just these ice crystals, so I wanted to mimic that, and I used this technique, and it was probably one of the most proud objects that I ever made up to that point. So I knew that by the time that exhibition was done, that style needed its own body of work and needed to become its own thing. So for the past 3 years, I've been working on this tensile series and just pushing the boundaries and exploring different color patterns and the patterns themselves and how I can manipulate them with different cold working techniques. So that's basically what I've been doing. And the work starts out as the first thing I make is a color cup. And I don't know if you can see me because I can't see myself on my screen, but this is the first stage. So I'll make this color cup, and all the colors on the surface And once it's cold, I use different diamond wheels to carve the pattern. This one's not quite finished. The nice thing about cold working is you can set it down and then come back to it later. But so once this stage is done, these get heated up, and with another large amount of glass, I stuff it into that cup, and then that becomes one, and I blow it up. And this is just, all of this process is why I'm even in glass, because the physical labor of it and the skill required and the hand skills and the team, all that is why I love what I do. And that's what this series is based on now, is just the love of making. I actually made this one 2 days ago. So this is completed stage 3. And then, so the final stage would be that I start cutting this into its final form, which you can see in some of these images here. What I really like to focus on as I begin to shape them is, what I'm looking for is how I can utilize the optics to make it as interesting as possible for the viewer, but also what I can take away from the glass. It starts out so beautiful. I feel like what makes it really more interesting is what I can remove. And that is the way I work, is through removal. I literally cut and grind away the glass until I end up with the form that I'm happy with. And then everything gets polished. So hours and hours and hours spent on one single object. You become quite intimate with it, and you know every little detail. So,
Mark, these works are over 12 inches tall, so they're quite substantial. It was great to see your process in your hands, because you get to see what you create before you take it, the commonality of it, of blowing, and then really spend the time carving, as you described, on and off over time to get the perfect piece. So that's great, Mark. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right, the next artist was recommended by Laura Donifer. You see, I found another photo of her. David LACATA. He is a up-and-coming artist that I've discovered recently, but I'm sure he's been working for a while, like the rest of these artists. He does these beautiful chain-like pieces made out of glass. He does wall installations like curtains as well, but I was more interested in this particular body of work because it was wearable. The work is about how people connect and interact. He uses traditional metalsmith techniques with glass to discuss strength and vanity, as well as protection. So it's always fun to show how people can use their glass art in their own styles, and he definitely has his own style. And these 2 pieces are at the gallery right now. I have yet to try them on, but I have been tempted. They are just so new and so refreshing to discover an artist like this for the show, to show someone so talented and taking it in their own direction. So we're grateful to have David in this exhibition. He also sent in the mannequins for the show too, which also helped with the presentation. So I'm grateful he's here. This is my information. I always put it in the middle of my presentations if you ever want to reach me, if you have any questions. But I'm going to move on to the next slide now. This artist was also recommended by Laura Donifer, and her name is Priscilla, and she will be here in a second. Priscilla, would you please unmute yourself?
Hi. So first and foremost, I'd like to thank Aaron, Habitat Galleries, and Laura Donifer for choosing me to be a part of the Silver exhibition. I'm very honored to be a part of this Zoom presentation with the AACG, and for you guys to get to know a little bit about me and a little bit about my work. So my family and I moved to Canada when I was 9, and growing up as a Chinese immigrant in North America, I've always felt my identity torn between the duality of my Western upbringing and my cultural heritage. I've worked hard throughout my life to live up to my parents' expectations, but after a decade as a healthcare professional, I felt a huge sense of dissatisfaction. And maybe because the last 4 of those 10 years I spent working in Saudi Arabia, where I faced alarming levels of racism and sexism, which made me feel truly like a class citizen. This experience made me more aware of the systemic patriarchy that still continues to exist and affect our contemporary culture. So after taking a few community classes about 6 years ago in glass, I felt a sense of empowerment that I never felt before. Glass left such a lasting impression that I decided to quit my full-time job and go back to school to pursue a career in glass. After graduating with a degree in craft and design, specializing in glass at Sheridan College, I was offered the opportunity to study under John Miller and Slate Grove in grad school, at Illinois State University, where I am currently at. I see my work as a whimsical and nostalgic and whimsical but mischievous way to start a conversation about the complex way our inherent patriarchal society has subtly affected the Asian female's position within its structure, and how it maintains this control through culture and social expectations and normalized gender roles. And you can go through the slides now, Erin.
Sure.
As you can see, I use Hello Kitty a lot in my work because she's a universally recognized symbol of pop culture, which exemplifies stereotypical Asian female characteristics, such as cuteness, meekness, and submissiveness. And I don't think that stereotypes are a false representation, but rather they're an arrested representation of a changing reality. So by employing Hello Kitty and other artifacts of patriarchy from my childhood in my work, I hope to advance this changing reality, to take back these symbols and use them to highlight the intersectionality of being a female of minority. So this first piece here is called Evolution, the Theory of Asian Mystique. It is my satirical take on the human evolutionary timeline. And as immigrants, our need to belong and assimilate in order to not rock the boat forces Asian females to live up to the confines of the stereotypes Western society continue to perpetuate. This binds us within a social framework that labels us modeled minority. And as we continue to bow to our feminine trappings, our sense of self is deflated until we can no longer hold our own. So these pieces are made from a CNC. So I do a lot of 3D rendering and SolidWorks or Rhino work. And these pieces are made from a mold that was CNC carved graphite. And you'll see this come up on the next slide. The next piece is called Missionary Squad 2, and it's part of a larger Kitty Army installation, which is set to be at the Pittsburgh Glass Center United exhibition in October. This series served as an exploration of my own culture in an attempt to understand the origins of the Asian female stereotype. The Kitty Army was actually inspired by the 3 obediences and the 4 virtues in Confucius's teachings, also called Samchong, Seida. And it's actually a set of moral principles and social code to restrict the behavior of women and meant to keep them in their place. So each of these kitties represents one of those 4 virtues, and then my answer to them. And lastly, Part of Your World and is a piece from my Gilded Memories series, which is comprised mostly of casted glass. This piece focuses on the issue of beauty surrounding women of color. And as an Asian immigrant, not only am I expected to maintain the patriarchal and heteronormative ideals of my own culture, I've also absorbed the gender norms and standards of beauty of my Western upbringing. The toy brush and the engraved mirror within the gilded music box represents the alarming standards of white beauty Asian females go through lengths to achieve, from eyelid surgery to bleaching creams, only to realize that we were set up for failure from the beginning. And as we continue to live with these failures and internalize them, the line between being shamed and being ashamed become blurred. So yeah, the music box actually works and is completely gilded in gold foil. And so I hope you enjoy my work, and thank you, Erin, for having me with the show.
Thank you, Priscilla. I love hearing your explanations. It always makes me understand your work more and more every time. And the depth you put into your thought process is great to share with everybody today. Thank you, Priscilla. All right, the next artist in our show was added by us here at Habitat, and we had him as a secondary artist in our international last year that was in our small office. He works with mostly ceramic, but he has added different types of glaze to his works, and they are just treasures. Tom, are you on today? I know you had planned on being here, but if you're not, we'll jump in for you without a problem. So, these are almost ritualistic treasures. You can imagine finding these in a royal throne room or bedroom, and they are just absolutely stunning in person. They uses silver or shiny glaze in the interior as well to give a small treasure spot as if it was a unique fire pit or some kind of treasure that you can explore over time. And they are, like I said, mostly ceramic, but Corey and I are both really drawn to Tom's work, and we wanted to include them in the show. They are just beautiful, and we've done well with them in the past. And they are priced very reasonably if you were to just discuss or think about acquiring one of these works. Tom?
I'm here.
Oh, you're here. All right, Tom. There you are. Feel free to tell us about your work. Take yourself off mute, please. Can you unmute yourself? Tom, I hear you. All right, Tom, unmute yourself. Can you unmute yourself? Try it one more time.
There.
Oh, we can hear you. Go ahead.
Thank you. It's an honor to be here, and I want to thank Aaron and Corey at Habitat. These are porcelain pieces, as Aaron described, and they're high fire to cone 10. I've been working in clay for over 30 years. And a lot of the glazes that you see on the work, especially the black glazes, are glazes that I've developed myself. I've got a background in chemistry, and that assists me a lot in my glaze development. After they are fired to cone 10, they then go through a post-firing silver technique, which is a bit novel. And that's how I achieved the metallic silvered surfaces. And inside the well of the Crucible series, it actually takes on a mirror-like finish. So you can see yourself and you can move around the piece and you can get a reflection of yourself that echoes into the piece. The Crucible series really addresses my longstanding interest in the idea of transformation. The idea of improving oneself, of regeneration, whether it's personal transformation, societal transformation, or in my particular background and case, scientific transformation. And I also have a strong interest in the history of science. And that, of course, leads me to the alchemists. And these pieces in particular address the pursuit that the alchemists had of transmuting base metals like lead into noble metals like silver or gold. Of course, they never achieved that. But that pursuit was really a philosophy and a course of study that was intended for self-improvement, for enlightenment and self-transformation. And in a lot of ways, the Crucible series really is about the alchemy of light and speaks to the idea of regeneration and self-improvement. These pieces look like they're solid, but they're actually hollow. They don't weigh 50 pounds like some people think they might. They're actually hollow and they weigh about 5 or 6 pounds. And a little bit about myself. I've got a technical background in chemistry, and I've exhibited widely nationally, including internationally in Japan. And the work is in several different museum collections.
Thank you, Tom. I appreciate you being with us today. I'm glad we found you, and thank you for telling us more about the work.
Aaron, thank you so much for the invitation.
You're most welcome. These works are at the gallery too for when people want to come visit us via private tour anytime. The next artist in the show was recommended by David Ricky. His name is James MASKERY, and he creates very interesting objects about different stories in time. So he researches different legends and stories, whether they're true or fables, and incorporates them in his work. And you get an idea by the title of his work, this particular piece called The Plan. When you start to see it, it starts to tell you a little bit about his thought process behind it. And again, another one called Aligned Misfortune, probably talking about a map in this particular piece of some story from an era. And it's always fun to, once you have a chance to meet with the artist, to talk about the works, to learn more about the ideas that the artist is sharing through their particular medium. And it's a great way of, when you become very interested in a topic, to share in a way with the world using your own style of creation. And this one called Elephant Island also probably has a great tale to it. I looked it up, but I recently haven't remembered it. So I'm gonna look back into James again and check out his work. This is a newer piece he created, 2 works with tops. Looks like it has boars on top, and I believe they have a truffle inside of it. It's quite a beautifully blown, professionally created artwork by James. We thank him for being part of the show. Next is an artist recommended by artist Sybil Peretti. And I believe Natalie is online. Natalie, will you unmute yourself and join us?
Hello, bonjour.
Hi, Natalie.
So my name is Natalie NADEAU, and I'm a multidisciplinary artist. I'm currently living in Montreal, Quebec, but I am from Windsor, Ontario, Canada. My art practice falls under two different conceptual ideas, industrial and domestic. So the pieces that are in this exhibition, the Discarded Women's Handkerchief collection, falls under the domesticity platform.
Tell her to talk louder.
Okay. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. So these pieces were created at a residency that took place last May at Northlands Creative in Scotland. I was accompanied by New Orleans artist Stephen Paul Day, which is Sibylla Peretti's husband. We were collaborating on a body of work and also just experimenting and doing smaller pieces on our own. So I have a quite lovely story that goes along with this handkerchief collection. At night, I was going for walks after working in the studio, and one of the nights I saw this charming elderly woman at the end of the street waiting under a street light, and the sun was starting to set. It was really beautiful. And a car was approaching, and she lifted up her arm and was waving a handkerchief to catch the attention of the driver, and the driver stopped. And as the driver was stopping, the wind took the handkerchief and it got away from her, and she was trying to grab it, but they were in a rush, so she hurried up and got in the vehicle and took off. So I walked over and I was able to get this handkerchief, and it's actually one of the castings that says Vive la Femme. That's the actual handkerchief from that night. And so I went back into the studio the following day, and I was looking through the things that I brought, and I had a tin from my grandmother's sewing basket, and it had handkerchiefs in it and little pins, buttons, embroidery thread, and some of the buttons had the sayings of the texts that are embroidered into the pieces. So that's why they're French. My grandmother is French Canadian. So the pieces are done in a pot de verre technique that I learned from Anna Peters, a German artist, and she calls it frit de verre. So I was experimenting with different textile pieces, and these were the three that came out really nice, but they are extremely fragile and thin and delicate. And they just sort of suspend off of objects as if they were just discarded. That's about all I can say.
Well, thank you, Natalie. They're absolutely stunning. We've had interest in these already. We're working on a way to display them in people's homes. And as you described them as being delicate, we're working on an idea to be able to put them on something to hold them in place. And I also wrote you about if you plan on continuing this, if you're ever going to do others that may go on a table, but we'll have a conversation about that another time.
Yeah.
I really love these works. They are stunning.
I installed them with museum gel, which helped to hold them on the surface, but I'm completely open to other ways of having to display them. But they're supposed to just be as if they've been discarded and left.
This is Marilee. I have to say that I met Natalie in at Northlands, and we had a fabulous dinner at the steps.
Yes, the Galapagos steps, yeah.
The Galapagos steps. And I did get to see your work. It was, so it really is fascinating and amazing. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Look at that small world. Glad we already have a connection to even try it. Thanks, Marilee. Thanks, Natalie. All right, next into the show was recommended by John Littleton and Kate Vogel. As an artist, many of us know as Kit Paulson. Kit creates beautiful, interesting objects. She explores the material, creating both the decorative and bizarre. The objects she creates, many could not exist in the natural world, and she has a great time creating these objects via lampwork glass. And she sent these for the Silver Show. They are currently still in her studio, due to times, but they are great to explore and see. We've had her in other exhibitions in the past. Just a great talent to keep your eye on, and we're honored to have her in our show. Next, and was recommended by Jennifer Pullman and Sabrina Knowles, is an artist named Morgan Peterson. Morgan, we also had in Pop and Lock last year, our secondary show for the International, and we're very impressed by her work. She explores addiction in today's society. Everybody is addicted to something. Powerful people, she says, powerful people perpetuate addiction in order to maintain discontent and unrest. She wants to evoke a response from you, from her work, reflecting on your own addiction, whether it be food or other things. I'm not going to go into details on what people are addicted to, but she really explores this in her artwork, and she's going to be an amazing artist to have in the future, and we're grateful to have her in the show. Next in the exhibition was another recommendation by Peter Hora from Czech Republic. This is Ronnie Plessel. Many of you may know Ronnie's work. He's quite famous in Europe. He's mostly a product designer, but he also designs beautiful cast glass objects on very large scale. He focuses a lot on uranium glass and big object. This thing you're looking at is 19 by 14. He's very, very famous, and he's been called the next Lubinsky. So if you have a chance to explore Ronnie's work, he's definitely someone to keep your eye on, especially because of cast glass objects he creates and just the beauty and simplicity to his work.
Oh, Aaron, he kind of reminds me of Walter de Maria.
Yeah, I gotta do more research on Walter Day, but I will definitely look into that. I appreciate you recommending that to me. The next artist we have in our show is Timothy Rawlinson, who was recommended also by UK artist David Reiki. And Timothy, we've actually sold a piece of his from the show already. You'll see in a minute. This particular piece was sold last week as a gift for a particular person's anniversary. His works are very substantial.
Hi, Aaron.
Oh, there he is. Tim, good to see you.
How you doing?
Good. Please tell us about your work.
Great. So, this is Echoes of Light B-side. My name is Tim Rawlinson, so I'm based in London, England. I originally actually started studying architecture before I moved over to ceramics and glass. And I think sort of the simple geometric forms of my work sort of responds more to that sort of architectural starting point. The colours within them they're all illusions, so it's sort of simple colour mixing in terms of pink and blue in this piece create this lovely rich purple. And it's really just to show the relationship between light and glass and the optics of the glass. So I sort of call it like painting with light. And I think Aaron last time referred to them as almost like three-dimensional paintings, which I really like. It's not just the piece itself, but the sort of projection of light that it gives off, and the shadows, and the way it can sort of change the environment that they're within. So it's quite important to that. So I blow pieces, but cold work is probably my sort of main concentrated way of working, just because it takes up the most amount of my time, and it's the finished execution that really sort of is the main importance of the pieces. And manipulating the optics of the glass. I want to draw the viewer in, and hopefully they will, the more they explore with the piece, the more they start to unfold and reveal different things, certain sort of illusionary aspects of them. And same with sort of most glass pieces, as you move around them, they change and warp and develop, and it really just wants to have that level of investigation. So this piece here, the echo color, the glow of the green, it's just the yellow and blue. It's the way the light passes through the transparent colors that creates that lovely glow. So it's really nice to try and make your own secondary colors just by using the transparency and the way the light passes through. In terms of what's going on at the moment, is I'm a resident artist at London Glass Blowing. I've been there for about 10 years now. It's run by Peter Layton, and me and Peter are about to open a new studio that is focused directly on cold work and also casting glass, which I've been starting to do over the past few years. Recently did a residency with an artist called Colin Reed, and it's sort of, so I like the painting aspect of the work, and with the casting element, I've been making blown colour and casting them, and able to create sort of like ink in water, and sort of the actual act of sort of paint and encapsulating with the glass. I've got a little one that I've been working on in lockdown, that was sort of part of the residency that I did at Collins. Again, simple geometric forms, but allowing the colour to really take sort of lead in that. I sort of think of it as almost like mini universes or worlds trapped within. And again, as you move, so does what the reflections and the optical qualities of the glass. So it's, again, that engagement that the viewer will have with the piece.
It's great, Tim. And these are quite substantial, almost a foot in size, if not larger. So they look like they're minuscule in these photos, but we have them at the gallery, and they're very impressive in person. They have that perfect finish of design and appeal to them. So, Tim, it's great to have you in this exhibition, and we're honored to have you.
Oh, thank you very much. It's an honor to be in it, and it's a pleasure to have this Zoom with everybody else.
Thank you so much.
Cheers.
You too. The next artist we have in the exhibition was added by another Habitat artist, and his name is Tom Ryder, and I believe Tom is on today. Tom, will you unmute yourself?
Hey, Aaron. Hey, everybody. Yeah,
thanks for joining
great
us.
to be here. Yeah, thanks so much for having me. My name is Tom Ryder. I live and work in Corning, New York. In the photo here, you see me doing a glass blowing demonstration at the Corning Museum of Glass. Been working there for about 11 years now. So if you've come through Corning in the past decade or so, you might have seen me blowing glass and making things and teaching people all about this amazing material. So I work in lots of different ways with the glass. I think it itself is inspiring in so many ways. But when I'm making my personal work, I'm mostly interested in the idea of the invisible. I like to make personal visualizations of different phenomena, different forces, different invisible forces. So I start to ask myself things like, what does electricity look like? What does sound look like? What does the energy in between two people start to look like? What does the energy between yourself, the earth, and the universe look like? So started to kind of study my relationship to the world, and you start to realize that a person has different meridian points, the earth has different meridians, and in astronomy there's meridians. And I don't think that all of these energies are all that different. I feel that we're kind of, all of these things are sort of connected through energy. But glass, to me, glass itself is intrinsically beautiful. A little piece of glass sitting on the floor is something that's so interesting. If you think about like sea glass or something like that, anybody sees a little piece of sea glass, you pick it up and you start trying to make your own little story. So I do think that we start with a little bit of an advantage over artists that work in other mediums. Just the nature of glass, I just find it so interesting. These pieces are all made out of clear glass, and as you kind of walk around them and interact with them, somebody can stand on one end or the other of some of these pieces. You can see yourself in the piece. You can see the other people looking at the piece on the other side of the piece, and we start to make connections in between people. So for me, everything has an energy, and we can start to think about how we're connecting here today as artists, how we connect through a show of all of these new artists. What does the energy here start to feel like and start to look like? And hopefully, as we're all kind of coming together and putting this creative energy out into the world, we can kind of influence the viewers that see the show and make a connection now in a time where I think connections are valued so much. So I'm just happy to be here. I've got all these artists that we all kind of follow on social media, and it's so great to actually kind of hear from them and see everybody. And I'd just like to thank Aaron and everybody at Habitat for putting this all together. It's really cool to come together and be part of the show and chat with everybody here today. So thank you.
Thank you, Tom. I appreciate it. Beautiful work. Thank you again.
Thanks.
Next was another edition by Laura Donifer, and her name is Megan Stelges, I believe it's pronounced. And she has some beautifully fun work that we have actually at the gallery. And I'll read you a little bit about her work. Her work is about sexuality and to create a dialogue about sex, sexuality, sexual health, and consent. And she explores color and light and uses pop culture. Her familiarity with food is a safe place to start. And that's where she creates these artworks for, so people can start somewhere and have a dialogue about a safe place to get to a place they're a little more uncomfortable about. And we're honored to have her in the show. And we really feel like she's onto something, and she's her work is very, very fun and lighthearted and easy to be around. So we thank Megan for being part of the show. Next is another artist added by Jennifer Pullman and Sabrina Knowles, and it's Austin Stern. I think he's online. Can you unmute yourself, Austin?
Yeah, no problem. Thanks for putting this meeting together, and thanks for including me in the show. I'm really happy to be working with Habitat and to see all this other great artwork from people that I've been like aware of and respected for a long time, but never shown with.
Glad to have you.
So a little bit about myself. I was born and raised in the Bay Area in California, and I moved to Seattle about 7 years ago. I started blowing glass when I was in high school, and it's really, over the last 16 years or so, become my sort of primary mode of creative expression. The series that is in the show is called The Little Monsters, and you can see some behind me, and then we've got some slides also. And in this series, what I'm talking about is mental health and anxiety. And I make these characters, and the characters, as you can see, have these smaller guys kind of attached to their head. And I make these as like physical representations of your thoughts and feelings, essentially. And so what I'm trying to do is use humor to talk about a subject that is ordinarily a little bit taboo, and to encourage people to express themselves in a way that ordinarily might be a little bit out of an individual's comfort zone. So I like when these pieces create like an empathic moment, and you see them and you go, oh, that's cute, or oh, that's funny. You're connecting on an emotional level, and maybe seeing something in one of my sculptures that you've thought or felt in your own life. From a technical point of view, I'm really interested in using cane and sort of either reinterpreting old techniques or inventing my own techniques to create patterns that enhance the message that I want a sculpture to carry. So that's kind of a general summary of the work. If anybody has any questions, I'd be happy to answer.
These are quite awesome in person. They're very lighthearted, and they're quite large. They're about 22 to 24 inches in size, so it's always impressive to see them in person. And Austin did send them in, so they're in our gallery now for an opening for a future exhibition. So thank you, Austin.
Yeah, my pleasure.
And then the next addition to the Silver Show was an artist we added named Ethan Stern. Ethan has a strong foundation in ceramics, and it leads to a unique perspective in the material. His work is an ongoing exploration of abstraction, color, texture, and light. And we have shown his work before, but for this particular exhibition called Silver, we wanted to explore his clear, translucent work to really get an idea of the depth of the texture he was talking about and the glass transparency that these works offer. So there's two in the exhibition, and you can just see the motion of the glass that he has put on there with his process. And currently he's exploring the modern idea of heirloom. gifts given from generation to generation. And I'm looking forward to seeing where his career continues on, and we're seeing if we have interest in his clear work. And we thank Ethan for being part of the show. A next artist recommended by David Reiki is a team, Ani Emmermark and Lewis Thompson, based out of the UK. They've been working together for over 5 years. They have a scientific approach to artwork invoking intrigue. Obviously, they're deep into the sciences as well, just like Tom Marino, and they approach every work in a special manner to create that kind of desire of understanding. This particular piece, I want you to experience tastes and memories of joy. Maybe you had ice cream as a child somewhere on a beach or on a balcony, and you can reflect on that particular moment in this style of work. The other idea, which is this Genesis composition, is about exploring the interior world, of creating an interior world with the material. You're exploring and seeing an unknown universe inside every one of these pieces. And it's this kind of work that draws you in and makes you think, and that's why we wanted to invite him to the show, and we thank them for being here. And, oops, ignore that slide. Oh, no, Michael Behrens also recommended an artist for the show, artist Maria Vocal, and I'm not sure if she's here, but I'll give her a second to unmute herself if she is. Maria works with Michael in Germany, and her work is inspired by the sea and the underworld, emerging from water, a different type of universe coming into another, from undersea to above. That particular moment of that feeling of refreshingness, that feeling of invigoration, her work is about. And she uses mythical creatures out of glass, and she incorporates these pieces with different kind of jewels or different kinds of artwork on top of them, representing the different worlds they may have come from. They may be sirens, they may be mermaids, they may be other undersea creatures. But every work has a story featuring, expressing dignity, strength, and grace. And these works are impressive in person, they're quite large, and someone who is very important to be part of Silver, because we're looking forward to seeing where her career takes us. That wraps up our Silver exhibition for this today, and I appreciate everybody's being here, especially all the artists and everybody who attended. I want to make a quick note before we can take questions of next week or tomorrow. I'm doing a one for Habitat Now for artist Peter Bremers called Getting Personal with the Artist. You're welcome to join us on that. Just simply send us a message and we'll get you on board. But if anybody has any questions, this would be the time. I'm going to stop sharing my screen. Feel free to unmute yourself, everybody.
That was fabulous. Questions from anybody? If you have a question, please unmute yourself and you may ask the question.
And artists are here as well if you see anything you want to ask them as well.
If we don't have questions, I'm going to stop recording, but I will tell you our next guest next week is from Prague, and it's Karen Lamont. And I have previewed this presentation. We have several videos of her work plus work from her studio, and it was it's quite impressive. So I'm looking forward to that as well. Today was wonderful, Erin. Thank you so much. And artists, thank you so much for joining us. That was a special treat.
Thank you for everybody for joining us, and thank you guys for being part of the show. And like I said, if you want to see more works, go to the silvershow.org and explore and share.
Great job putting it together, Erin.
Thank you, Bonnie.